Here's a writing deep dive into the 2024 movie Deadpool and Wolverine. Number 1, redemption story. One of the likeliest outcomes of Deadpool and Wolverine will be the reignition of fan discussions in person and online, especially around the humor, payoff moments, cameos, and outcomes for this film. The interesting thing about this movie is that it easily functions as a standalone story that doesn't need to have an impact on the rest of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I think what resonates deeply for the audiences in this film will be the redemption story at its heart, as visualized through Deadpool and Wolverine's individual character arcs. Tone has always been important for Deadpool movies, and it uses Ryan Reynolds' fast-paced voiceover to set up the rhythm of the movie, plus front-loading a lot of R-rated humor and meta-level jokes. We see this play out in this third Deadpool film, especially within the first few minutes, where Deadpool obliterates a slew of TVA agents, basically informing us that a Deadpool movie under the jurisdiction of the Walt Disney Company and Marvel Studios will not hold back on the violence and R-rated humor we've seen in the first two films that were not tied to the MCU. Tone is also used as a contrast against the emotional center of the film with its redemptive storyline. For Deadpool's Wade Wilson, we see a man who is essentially stuck in a rut, and his life has fallen apart after he was rejected by the Avengers, or more specifically, Head of Security Happy, played by Jon Favreau, who works for Tony Stark. This is why the film basically goes from the opening fight with the TVA agents and then flashes back to a scene in 2018 where Deadpool goes to meet with Hogan and gets the hard news that he's not Avengers material. The filmmakers classically set up Deadpool as a character in this movie who is under a false assumption about himself. He believes that his life will matter if he gets to be part of the Avengers. He tells Happy that he needs this position, and Happy clearly sets up a milestone that Deadpool will eventually reach on his character arc by saying that the Avengers didn't become Avengers because they needed the position, but that other people needed them. Later in the second act, when the villain Cassandra Nova uses her powers to search Deadpool's mind, we see flashbacks to his memories with his ex-girlfriend Vanessa. A key scene to track Deadpool's arc is the memory of him and Vanessa at the table in their apartment post-Avengers rejection. Deadpool is emotionally shutting down and stuck in depression, and he's closed himself off to Vanessa. This leads to the deterioration of their relationship over time. So for Deadpool's arc to be satisfying, he has to confront the false assumption that he's working under and to break through to the truth about himself. We see this in the climax when Deadpool chooses to sacrifice himself to short-circuit the Time Ripper and to stop Cassandra Nova for taking over the multiverse. At this point, Deadpool knows he's not going to become an Avenger and he's giving up all hope of any future opportunities. He realizes that the thing giving his life meaning and purpose is to sacrifice his life to save the people he loves, namely the 9 friends he cherishes in his group picture. This theme of self-sacrifice for a greater purpose is familiar and key to many hero stories, so what makes it fresh in this movie is wrapping a buddy comedy story with Deadpool's trademark R-rated meta-humor as the outer shell. Deadpool is redeemed in his character arc by letting go of his false assumption and proactively taking steps toward a new goal that answers his need to define his significance. Redemption also plays in Wolverine's storyline throughout this film because we're witnessing a loser Wolverine who is blinded by shame and guilt for failing the X-Men in his universe and contributing to their deaths. This Wolverine has a false assumption that he is no good at his core and that he has failed the high values of his mentor, Professor Charles Xavier. The film pairs Deadpool and Wolverine together because it's making the dramatic argument that these two characters, who initially don't like each other, actually need to go on this journey together in order to achieve their redemption arcs. By the film's end, we realize that Wolverine needed Deadpool to pull him out of his universe and to go on this adventure because without that action, Wolverine would have been stuck in a stagnant, pitiful existence. Both characters are able to point out each other's flaws in order to dramatically push their stories further. Pointing out a flaw is a dramatic action that leads to a reaction in the other character that leads to another dramatic action. This is seen in the lead up to the car fight scene between Deadpool and Wolverine. In their argument, Wolverine clearly mocks Deadpool for not being fit to save the universe if he can't save his relationship with Vanessa. This hurtful insight rings true for Deadpool, and it also highlights how he underestimated his approach to attempting to save his universe. He hasn't fully thought it through, and he's being reckless and self-centered in its pursuit. Wolverine is the actual character who once was a hero and knows what it means to live with his sacrificial values, so he has ground to stand on when criticizing Deadpool for what he's lacking. Redemption not only is central to Deadpool and Wolverine's arcs, but we get to see that visualized in payoffs relating to the cameos of Blade, Elektra, Gambit, and X-23.
What?
Movie fans will know these characters as being separate from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but who didn't get further on-screen character development for different reasons. This movie relies on us bringing in previous knowledge or awareness of these cameo characters in order to get a payoff. So the filmmakers play with the idea of redemption in using these cameo characters as part of the second act, giving more material for scenes where Deadpool and Wolverine can form quick relationships with them, and then assemble a team to confront Cassandra and her army. It's interesting to note that these characters appear in the second act of the film where many films tend to lag, but Here, the filmmakers made good use of these characters by integrating them into the plot and having them be crucial to how events play out in the second act. Essentially, Deadpool and Wolverine needed a team to battle Cassandra, and this is where Blade, Elektra, Gambit, and X-23 come into play. So redemption arcs are a huge structural part of the movie's framework, and it fits nicely in creating a story for established characters to cover new ground that wasn't in their previous films. Number 2, villain. The film has two antagonists with Mr. Paradox at the TVA and Cassandra Nova, who is Charles Xavier's twin sister living in the void. The Mr. Paradox character comes across as a begrudging middle manager who gets in over his head when he tries to lay out plans to accelerate the death of Deadpool's universe. It is the Cassandra Nova character who stands out as the more powerful villain because of her mutant abilities and her plan to rule the multiverse as her expansion of the void. But I think this is where the movie gets a little muddy with having a clear, strong arc for Cassandra. One telling scene is where Deadpool and Wolverine subdue Cassandra at her lair with the Juggernaut's helmet over her head. The choices appear to be either to kill Cassandra right there, or if they free her from the helmet, she will kill them. Wolverine takes the high road and states that he could not kill Cassandra based on the values that Professor X instilled in him. So he and Deadpool allow the helmet to be removed from Cassandra, and she seems to have a momentary change of heart by opening a portal for them to escape. But moments later, when one of her henchmen, Pyro, reveals the connection to Mr. Paradox and the Time Ripper machine, Cassandra pivots to a new plan to take over the multiverse. This plan itself is not necessarily muddy, but it feels as if this villain was about to veer away from her evil route in the moment when she helped the heroes, but then shifts again back to full-on villain mode. So it's a little bit unclear. Maybe it would have been better to have a more clear through line for Cassandra. We don't get the kind of strong character development that happens when you have a villain and a hero building their dynamic with scenes that they're both in and where the character arcs are dramatically pushed further. Think of how Heath Ledger's Joker pushed Christian Bale's Batman in The Dark Knight. But in this movie, the heroes spend a lot of time away from Cassandra outside of their initial meeting and then their final confrontation. So we don't get the back and forth between heroes and villains that strengthen their objectives and the actions they will take to pursue those objectives. Maybe it would have been stronger to explore a tension between Wolverine and Cassandra, giving Wolverine's bond with Professor X. For the sake of exploring a different path in storytelling, maybe Cassandra develops a strong enmity toward Wolverine because of her learning about Logan's connection to Charles Xavier, and her hatred toward her brother is transferred and amplified onto Wolverine. We see story beats of her trying to appeal to Logan when she examines his mind. She tells him that she can set him free to be who he truly is in the void. Is there something in seeing Cassandra really manipulate Wolverine by seemingly trying to give him something he wants but actually is trying to destroy him? Would this strengthen Wolverine's arc if he was tempted to go along with her plan? Maybe he even saw a second chance at redemption by going along with Cassandra if he saw a shade of Charles in her or her grandiose vision. These are all hypothetical ideas that would need to be fleshed out, but the spirit of this is to push the villain dramatically further in order to strengthen the core storyline. Number 3, heart. Emotional heart is what makes the story resonate with audiences, and we can feel that in this movie through the redemptive character arcs for Deadpool and Wolverine. I think the presence of this emotional heart is a key factor to counter the R-rated humor and gore of the movie, because without it, audiences would be more turned off by the coarseness they saw on screen. We're essentially seeing heart set up and paid off in the growing relationship between Deadpool and Wolverine in this film. We start off with two characters who don't like each other, and they even violently attack each other, getting their frustration out in gory ways. We can see that play out vividly in their car fight scene, but it's moving them past that initial tension and bringing them through understanding each other and then choosing to partner with each other that makes the journey satisfying. So in the film's climax, when we get to the surprise of Wolverine breaking into the chamber and joining Deadpool to short-circuit the Time Ripper, this is a high emotional moment that visualizes heart. We want to see these characters align with each other, and at the same time, we don't want to see them die, even as they give their lives to save others. Thanks for watching this video, and please let me know if you have any suggestions for other movies, series, and games to analyze. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment below on what you think about this movie.